The truth had been buried for 180 years. The real story had never been told. Until now. By acclaimed author Sharon Ewell Foster in The Resurrection of Nat Turner. Hear his story for the very first time. Let's get right into it, Sharon. You are in now Cortland, Virginia.
Yes.
Looking at the trial records of Nat Turner, and what did you find?
What I found was that Thomas Gray was not Nat Turner's attorney. His name is not mentioned at the trial at all. And indeed, Thomas Gray asserts that Nat Turner confessed. He didn't confess. He pled innocent, and there was no confession read at his trial. So this historical document that we've been relying on, that the historians have been relying on, it's false. And I have to be honest with you, my heart sank, my stomach knotted up, because there are things that we want to believe are real and that are true. And we want to believe that the historical documents that we receive, that they're true. But in this case, it was very quickly clear to me that it was false. And that the person that was giving testimony at Nat Turner's trial, it seemed clear to me that he perjured himself.
Wow. Wow, Sharon. And you bring this out in the book.
Yes.
The Resurrection of Nat Turner.
Yes. This particular gentleman, whose name was Levi Waller, he testified at several different trials, and each time he told a different story until finally at Nat Turner's trial he confesses the truth.
Oh, my goodness. Well, okay. I want to, when we come back, Sharon, I really want to talk about Nat Turner. There are some on one side of the fence who idolize him as a hero, and there are others who dehumanize him. I want to hear from you right after this. We're back in the studio with Sharon Ewell Foster, and we're talking about her brand new book, The Resurrection of Nat Turner. And before we took the break, Sharon, we were talking about the actual slave revolt that Nat Turner led, and you finding out the court records, what we have always been told has not been the actual case. It has not been factual. But I do want to look at the fact that Nat Turner did lead a revolt that resulted in the death of whites. Over 45.
Mm-hmm. Over 50.
Over 50 white people were killed under his leadership. Talk about that from the perspective of those who want to idolize him and those who want to dehumanize him.
You know, it was for me as a writer, as a person, as a Christian. I struggled with it at first. I thought, do I really want to write a book about this person? I'm ambiguous about it. But as I stepped back from it, and as I, particularly as I saw that the document that had been written about him, this pamphlet called The Confessions of Nat Turner, as I saw that that was a lie, I began to think, well, who was this person? Who was he really? What kind of person must a slave have been that all these people contrive to come up with this document about him to tell this story of who he was? And I thought, well, what is different about what he did than some of our forefathers that we celebrate? We celebrate Nathan Hale, and we celebrate George Washington. And these were people who believed in liberty. We celebrate Thomas Jefferson. And so what is so different about Nat Turner. I that is something that I thought about, that I actually wrote about in the book. I think that there's an African proverb that says, until the lion begins to write his own history, that the story will always be told from the perspective of the hunter. I think that in Nat Turner's case, there were not slaves who were writing the history. They didn't have voices. Not even in court could they speak openly and say, we did this for the sake of liberty, or we did this for the sake of freedom. And so the story that's told is from the perspective of, in this case, slave owners. Everyone who sat as judge at the trials was a slave owner. All the lawyers were slave owners. And so, obviously they had a perspective that has prevailed. I tend to look at him in a different way after having been on this journey trying to find him. And I think that he was a man who was looking for freedom, a man who was looking for liberty. And it was clearly not a uprising against all whites. None of the Quaker families were touched. There were indeed white families that were around the area where Nat Turner and his group struck, who were never touched. So it was clearly not an uprising where the intent was to kill all whites.
Okay, I definitely want to hear more about this, so we'll be back with Sharon Ewell Foster.